Popaholics, show about hot takes hotter than hot tasty pancakes, where you hear movie opinions, video game opinions, whatever. We're so fly. We're closing out the James Bond month, reviewing No Time to Die. I'm your host, Christian, and I'm joined, as always, by my two best friends.
Chris Conkling.
And Brian Dupree.
And I am Beelzebub? What are we doing on this show? Well, you've reached a great episode of Popaholics. No Time to Pod has been the theme of this month. We theme our months because we're real fun, and we do things a bit different around here.
Nope, leave it where it was. Gone.
I'm just saying, all I'm saying is that around here, we do things a bit different. We theme our months, and we've been reviewing we've been looking back at the Craig Bond era as a whole. And so if you're watching on YouTube or you're listening to the audio feed, you can go back and see all of our opinions from Casino Royale all the way to Spectre and see what we think of it. We've been looking back on it. It's been a super fun month. But boys, we come to the end of the Craig era, and we saw in theaters, finally, it's been delayed for quite some time, but we finally get an end to such an epic story that has been so well thought out and planned meticulously to tell a piece of narrative throughout.
The first ever Bond arc.
Did they land it? We're
going to talk about it.
Did the plane wobble towards the end? I'm interested to find out. But before we do that, let's play that trailer for No Time to Die.
Bond, any thug can kill. I have to know I can trust you.
Well, I understand double O's have a very short life expectancy.
He became 007.
Dancing in a hurricane, Mr. Bond.
Is this really what you want? Always alone?
We used to be able to get into a room with the enemy. And now they're just floating in the ether.
When her secret finds its way out, it'll be the death of...
That is from the trailer of No Time to Die. It was released in 2021. It was filmed in 1987, I believe, but delayed a couple of times. Directed by Cary Joji Fukunaga. Written by Neal Purvis, Robert Wade, and Cary Joji Fukunaga. Carry on our wayward son, Joji Fukunaga. And Phoebe Waller-Bridger. With a score by Hans Zimmer. And a budget of $250 to $300 million. It grossed $450 million as of this recording. And it stars Daniel Craig, Rami Malek, Léa Seydoux, Lashana Lynch, Ben Whishaw, Naomie Harris, Jeffrey Wright, Christoph Waltz, and Ray Fiennes.
Ray Seeks.
What are we going to be talking about?
Sorry.
Wraiths. Voldemort. What are we going to be talking about? Well, we're going to talk about No Time to Die by Billie Eilish. Or Billie Eilish. Been pronounced multiple ways. So you choose. Dealer's choice, I hear she says. And
It's just Eilish.
We're going to compare it to... I can't hear you. We're going to compare it to the other Craig Bond themes. We're going to talk about our non-spoiler thoughts. And then dive into spoiler talk, where we'll talk about our favorite moments and ask the really important question. Is this a fitting end to the Craig era? But let's start with that tune, that track. Boys, I got to say, I held off, didn't listen to the song at all, didn't hear anything about it, was very excited to see it live in the theater. It starts playing. Obviously, we'll talk about the beginning of this movie later in spoilers, but an interesting beginning. We get into a beautiful cinematic. The song starts playing, and I go, oh, I heard this song 2 years ago. When it was announced, I listened to it for sure. Totally forgot.
Okay.
And the music
I'm
brought
pretty
me
sure
back.
we linked it in our group chat when it was first released.
For sure. I've listened to this song before, and we'll get into our thoughts. Chris, your favorite so far has been the Jack White, Alicia Keys rendition.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I'm really interested to hear, because that was an interesting, bold take. So I'm interested to hear your thoughts on this Billie Eilish attempt at a Bond tune.
Just to clarify, loyal viewer, that is not my favorite Daniel Craig Bond theme.
Chris,
I
viewers.
think we're in
Viewers.
unanimous agreement that Skyfall, up until this point, is the best Bond or Daniel Craig Bond theme. But I heard No Time to Die prior to the movie coming out. I've listened to it actually several times prior to the movie coming out. And I have to say, when they first announced that Billie Eilish was going to be singing the Bond song in 2019, I was a little upset. I was like, I don't know if she's going to be able to do this, but my God, this is some of the most mature work that I think she's ever done. I think it truly does rival Skyfall in terms of quality and could potentially win another Academy Award, just as Skyfall did. We'll see. But yeah, I really like this Bond theme. You know, we've talked over the course of this month kind of our prerequisites for what makes the best type of Bond music. One of the prerequisites is it has to have the title of the movie as the title of the track and lyrics in the song. And you know what? That hits that criteria. I think she's singing beautifully in this song. If I'm being honest, I've only seen the movie once, and I don't remember a whole lot from the opening sequence. So I can't speak as thoroughly as I did in our previous episodes about the opening sequence, but I will say the song itself is top tier, and definitely it fights Skyfall for nudging it out of that first place in terms of how I rank my Bond themes for the Daniel Craig era.
Very cool. Brian, your thoughts on No Time to Die by Billie Eilish?
All right. So if we're talking about it in context, in the movie, with the visuals, you guys, I think this one overtook Skyfall for me in combination with the visuals.
Wow.
Seeing this, I've seen this movie twice in theaters now. And the second time, knowing where the movie goes, kind of a different way to go into the opening credits without saying too much. It's definitely different than you'd usually expect going into this. And it's just...
it's all flooding back to me now. I do remember how it transitions into the opening credits.
And we get it coming in before, too.
It's a very stark contrast to what we've seen before. And I was immediately like, oh, that's very interesting. So I did dig it. Thanks for getting my brain in motion, Brian. I appreciate that.
Oh, yeah. No, it's really well done. And the second time I saw it, I was fighting off just openly starting to bawl in the theater. And I think ultimately it's probably, and we'll get into the movie itself, the most emotionally powerful for me, more so than even the climax of the movie. But the visuals combined with the lyrics, it feels so fitting to be talking about Bond in this way. Someone who put his whole life, his whole career to this thing that ultimately is crumbling around him. And the thing that he trusted for the entirety of his life, where he put his whole livelihood, he is completely on the outside of now to some degree. And it captures all of that so well, incorporates the classic theme beautifully. And her performance is, a lot of people, some of her most popular tracks are very produced in terms of the vocals. And this is very stripped down compared to a lot of her other stuff, and highlights how much of an incredible vocalist she is. Her and her brother Fiennes write all of this together, and it's incredible. I'll just let you go from there, Christian. But yeah, I think at this point, in my life, the song combined with the visuals is even stronger than Skyfall for me.
Yeah, her brother Ray Fiennes. Yeah, it's really good. Yeah, I dig this track. Chris, I'm right with you. I think this rivals Skyfall as one of my favorites. It might be like a tie at this point, because I don't want to go on record and say it's better. I will say I think it's the...
Until it wins that Academy Award, I mean, empirically, it's kind of not better.
Oh,
right?
Oh, yeah, because awards that people that a committee gets together to say,
right, they're like...
We'll let you know what's the
literally
best.
a specter who's deciding who gets to win this award.
Yeah.
Invalid.
Well, We'll see if they have anything to say at the end of this. I am a fan of Billie Eilish to a certain extent. It's definitely not for my generation, but I do think that that debut LP is nothing to shake a stick at. I believe it won a Grammy. Oh, sorry, my recording stopped for a second. I believe it won a Grammy when it debuted. It's really good. That's probably my favorite output from her. Her newest one is for a special kind of generation. My sister, who is a performer and a singer, it's her like favorite thing ever, I think, at this moment. And I listened to it and it just made me have a panic attack. It's so anxiety ridden. If you want to get into the head of a teenage girl going through it, her latest LP is definitely like something that gets you in that mood. Not a mood I want to be in right now, but it's really good and really well produced and all that stuff. But it just made me stressed out. That's not to the quality, and it's very effective at making you feel stressed. So it did work. So it's interesting, having heard it a while ago when this was announced, what feels like an eternity ago, and getting to hear it again with the visuals. I think the visuals are top tier. Like I think they're awesome. The way it pops in is really great, really reminiscent of older Bond as well. And it's just such a classically good Bond song. It kind of has that softness that Skyfall and even Writings on the Wall have. But I said it in the chat, the vocal performance is one of my favorites from Billie Eilish. There's a lot of people that do her voice. That's that little coffee voice that's so tender, and you just have such a good microphone that picks up on the little things that happen. It's in the thing. And she has that, which I do believe she's doing it the best, right? And there's some people that do it when just like the Jarl. You know, we talked about the Jarl. You know, Chris Cornell, he's got a Jarl, but it's a nice, subtle, beautiful Jarl. But it has been parodied, and it can get to that range. Billie Eilish has that soft coffee, act voice that she's got, but I just beg you, listen to the song and listen to the subtleties of what she's fluctuating as far as her glissandos, which is sliding around on notes, and her subtle like deviations and quivers. Like, it's beautiful. And I was lucky enough to actually get to watch this in a good theater, because I previously had a really bad back to the theater experience. Very happy with the sound system, and it really accentuated the vocals really well. And it was just, I was hanging on it. And Brian, I think you're nailing it. One of the most emotionally impactful parts of this movie, for better and for worse. And I do think the opening's good as we talk about this movie. I think the opening is pretty solid, and yeah, I mean, this definitely is a high point of the entire movie for me. So really enjoyed No Time to Die. It's rivaling Skyfall. I might even just call it a tie at this point, but it's pretty solid. We all enjoyed it. I think it is the best opening, overall package. I will say it's my favorite, opening of all of them.
I definitely wanted to specify that, because there's stuff here, and forgive me if I'm confusing this with Spectre, but I think it's in No Time to Die. We get the guns forming DNA spirals.
Yes, as they're shooting. They shoot into the DNA spirals. It's just incredible stuff. Like, really, really awesome. As cool. Well as, there's the line like that I've fallen for a lie. And we see I don't know if it's the flag or like a statue of something associated with Britain that's just crumbling and falling. Just all this incredible imagery that's really working well for me, I think. And you do get, I believe it's, I don't know if it's rosebuds, but it almost seemed like it was like rosebuds, but in the form of like a vine and roses, but almost like how a playing card would have it. So it almost called back to Casino Royale, and that art style is very similar.
There was, oh man, God, I wish I had been able to see this twice, because you guys are bringing back all this imagery into my head. Yeah. One of the things I wanted to call out was at the very beginning of the sequence, there is a direct callback to Casino Royale with the hearts being fired from the guns, just like they were in Casino Royale. So yeah, there's definitely a callback to other Daniel Craig Bond era opening sequences in this one sequence.
It was very well thought out. It seems like one of the most cohesive elements about this film in connecting all these Bonds together. So definitely a highlight for me. Really enjoyed it. Billie Eilish continually making me feel sad and inadequate as a musician. So thank you. Her brother and Billie Eilish, good work. Not that you need any more pats on the back. So that's the opening theme. We're all fans of it. I think this is working really well. But the actual movie, we've talked a little bit about the opening sequence, and we're not going to spoil anything here. But overall, is this a way for us to go out on the Craig era Bond? Chris, Hand us that hot take, hotter than a hot tasty pancake.
I'd say overall, this was a really enjoyable experience. My wife and I went to the theater. We saw it together. Bond is one of those franchises that, we share love for in common. And she, over the course of this month, had rewatched a lot of these movies with me. So we were kind of primed and ready to get into this last Daniel Craig Bond film. And there are a lot of things in this that are working really well for me. There are elements in this movie, and I'm not going to go into details in our non-spoiler section, but I kind of mentioned it to you guys. There are elements of this movie that definitely make it feel less like a 007 film and more like a James Bond film. And I think it's fitting that certain things take place within this film. It suits that, and we'll dive into that a little bit more once we get into spoilers. But there were moments in this movie where I was openly weeping. My wife was as well. So it was emotionally impactful in terms of being a fitting send-off for Daniel Craig. It's really hard for me to say. I'm kind of still ruminating on it. But my initial thoughts coming out of the theater were I think I kind of preferred Spectre as a send-off for Daniel Craig. We mentioned last week during our Spectre episode that it was initially supposed to be his last film, but Daniel Craig read the script for No Time to Die and decided that this would be a more fitting finale for him. And to me, I don't think No Time to Die is a bad movie. I'll definitely watch it again. But Spectre is a better capstone, despite how much nitpicking we did last week for certain things in that movie. This movie also has some things that I think are worthy of a little nitpicking.
Just a few. But
yeah, overall,
just a few things.
Yeah. Overall, it was a really fun experience. Daniel Craig is still my favorite James Bond. And in terms of this little experiment that they were doing with an overarching narrative for a single James Bond character, I think it worked really well. It helped people get invested in this particular James Bond, which is something that I appreciate. But No Time to Die feels extra, and maybe even unnecessary.
Superfluous.
Ooh,
superfluous,
wow.
I think, is a great way.
That's a bit harsh. I will say
to
this. I think that's a bit much.
Describe it.
But
that doesn't mean that it's not enjoyable.
Sure.
I think both opinions can exist simultaneously within one person. But I do agree with Christian that I do feel as though it's superfluous.
I didn't say that it was. You said that.
Fine. It's superfluous. I'm saying that it might be superfluous. In the same vein, we've never talked about this movie ever, but getting out of Toy Story 4, I walked out of that movie and I was like, that movie doesn't need to exist. Like, cool. We got to spend a little more time with these characters, but like, no reason for that to exist.
Wow. There's some animators that got a good payday
feelings.
that would disagree with you.
Porky is just weeping right now over this.
I don't care.
To be clear, I've not seen Toy Story 4, but I feel like there's a bunch of animators that heavily disagree.
Amazing Shining reference. Got to shout it out.
Keanu Reeves,
as usual with the Toy Story movies.
Keanu Reeves is the Canadian stunt man.
Yeah,
seems to be worth
in
that
it
movie
as well.
Mm-hmm.
Worth the price of admission right there. Even though I haven't seen a film. That's the only reason I would visit it.
So yeah,
You're not
in closing,
wrong, though, Chris.
No Time to Die, superfluous but enjoyable.
The Toy
says Chris
Story
Conkling.
4 of the Craig Bond movies.
But
You heard it here first.
Let's be clear that Spectre does not bat an eyelash to Toy Story 3. Let's
Oh,
be very
absolutely
clear about
not.
that.
Different leagues.
Completely
in
different
terms of
leagues,
overall
yes.
quality.
Very cool. Thanks, Chris. Brian, very curious. You've actually seen it twice at this point, and I'm really interested to hear, because you probably have the best overall view of this Craig era, because you watched Spectre, and then watched this, and this is very much, as you said in our Spectre review, a direct sequel to Spectre and very tied into that story. We've got a lot of returning characters, and a lot of the, Spectre is definitely a big part as an organization of this story. So I'm very curious to hear, what did you think of No Time to Die?
Yeah, so the first time I saw this movie, it was in a packed screening at the Chinese theater. So I was probably going to love.
How are you going to beat that?
This right from the get-go. giant, probably the biggest screen I've ever experienced in terms of an IMAX screen, incredible sound. And I think I said it last week, but I saw this movie twice. It's 2 hours 45. I'm someone who has to go to the bathroom during movies sometimes, and I sat through this both times. So while I do think this movie is bloated and it's trying to do a lot in a single film that should have maybe a little legwork could have been used in other movies, I would say, I think it moves, and it doesn't really particularly drag for me, at least in the first two viewings. So I was pretty impressed with that, given the runtime going in. I think at times it's up there in terms of the beauty of the sets and the locations with Skyfall and Casino Royale. It's definitely top tier at times, maybe a little more inconsistent than Skyfall is, but some really, really beautiful stuff happening there. The humor is really great. I think ultimately it's tonally less consistent than Spectre, even, which Spectre tonally very silly throughout, borders on melancholy. This really leans into the drama even more, but keeps the comedy. So the emotion kind of doesn't sit as well for me, ultimately. The action, there's one action set piece that is one of my favorite in the entirety of the series. I don't think it's all working incredibly, but definitely some really solid action. I think the ending is bold. Regardless of how you look at it, they went for it and made a decision. And I think they've given themselves room to like multiple paths that they could go forward. And we'll get into that in spoilers. But this felt like we'll ultimately say if I think it's a fitting end. But I feel like this was, I don't think it was as superfluous as you seem to, Chris, although I do think Spectre is tonally more consistent, and it could have been a send-off. But like I said, I think even though the front half of this movie is very much the better half for me, maybe, yeah, but probably the front half, the emotional level that it hit me on in the front half puts it a step above in terms of a finale for Spectre, even if the end didn't work as well.
Thanks, Brian. I probably tend to agree more with Brian. I think this movie perfectly encapsulates what we've seen with the Craig Bond era. It's got some of the highs and it's got some of the lows. I think that this era of Bond has always struggled with, are we going to be Roger Moore, Pierce Brosnan fun? Are we going to be pseudo-realistic spy thriller, such as the early Connery? You know, thinking back to Dr. No, which is very, very straightforward, similar to Casino Royale, or Her Majesty's Secret Service, like From Russia with Love, especially, right? Some of the more self-serious Bond flicks to the goofy octopusy level of, like, you know, disfigured villain with over-the-top action and funny gags. Like, this film kind of tries to do both of those, similar to Spectre. It's a very A-B to Spectre, and I think it's fitting with Spectre, and I think it fits very well with this like trying to be episodic, more so episodic than Bond's ever tried to been. Like, this has to do, you will see a reference to every single Bond film that has come before it, even Quantum. And there's references to that. There's references to classic Bond. There's a lot of visual motifs and throwbacks. So I think it's trying to do so much, and I think it, like, at the end of the day, for what I love about what the Craig Bond has done, and also what I like about classic Bond, which is a real thing. Like, there is a GoldenEye, Tomorrow Never Dies, Octopussy, Live and Let Die version of Bond that I love. And then there's that Casino Royale, let's reinvent this wheel and, like, try to, like, describe what this character, how he would become the way that we know him level of, like, I love all those things. And I think it's trying to serve those two masters. It's trying to have its cake and eat it too, whatever stupid overblown cliche film metaphor you want to use, but it really is trying to serve all of those audiences, and in doing so it doesn't work cohesively as a piece, which is this entire Craig Bond series. which is some directors going, we're gonna have a little bit more fun. We're gonna be like, it's gonna be Craig, but it's gonna be more fun. And then what we get with Casino Royale, especially of let's actually tell not necessarily dark and gritty. I don't think Casino Royale. I think it's hyperbole.
Grounded, I think is the right word.
Grounded, even like purposeful and like not ludicrous, right? And in this we get like literal like we get the culmination of all the archetypes of Bond, similar to Spectre. Again, why it's a great like companion piece of Spectre of like there's an evil base. And there's an evil disfigured villain, and there's the tropey like take over the world, and the ideas that don't make quite sense, and the very convenient placement of people, and the illogical like bad guy explains his play. Like there's all that shit going on, while also telling a heartbreaking tale of Bond trying to navigate relationships. Right? It's doing both of those things, and it's doing them bad. Like as far as combining them, like it's not doing them good in the same piece, but it's like it's flip-flopping continuously, which is what we saw, I think, with Spectre. So I think it matches what we've seen in the latter half of this Bond. I think we both probably are all three of us place it similarly in league with like Quantum Spectre. Like I think it's maybe depending on the day, and I have only seen this once, like I liked it more than Spectre in a lot of different ways. But I think if you took half of Spectre and half of this movie, you could make the serious Bond movie. And then you took the other half of both movies, you could make the silly, goofus Bond that is also fun in its own way of like just Bond being Bond, and that's fun.
Bond. Goofus Bond.
And I really do think that's the trouble. And listen, making movies is hard. Acting is hard. But for what Craig is and how he's personally navigating it, I think he gets all the kudos in the world for having to do both things at once. Similar to Roger Moore, similar to Pierce Brosnan. I love that Daniel Craig was Bond. And at the end of the day, I like appreciate that. I think he was a great Bond. I think the future is bright for the ideas that they could have going. And this, I think, was a great send-off for Craig. And not a perfect film. None of the films have been near perfect since Casino. But that maybe is lightning in a bottle, right? That's just a special kind of thing that happens. So overall, I enjoyed it almost maybe a little bit more than Spectre for all the right and wrong reasons that you'd enjoy a film like this. So
I want to shout out a few things before we go. I think Lashana Lynch is an excellent addition to the cast. I really liked, without getting into who her character is, she plays Nomi. I thought her interactions with Craig were really well done.
That is kind of a foil with Bond in the beginning of the film and throughout.
Yes, that's Lashana Lynch. I think everything happening between their two characters is pretty well done, except for one glaringly stupid moment that we'll get into in spoilers. Ana de Armas, ridiculously underused here, but when she's on screen, it's some of the best parts of the movie for me. So I just wanted to shout both of them out as well. Rami Malek.
And she's earlier in the film, right? This is the person.
Ana de Armas, yes,
okay.
is
literally the best part of the film. When the Bond is having the most
so much fun.
I'm bringing it up in favorite moments, but I 100% agree. Felix being involved too. The stuff with Felix early on, it's really, really
very
great.
different
Wright,
Felix than we've seen throughout. Like Felix got jacked up on something and comes in real strong, and I'm here for it. But it's also a little weird.
Let's save it for spoilers.
But
we'll get into it in spoilers for sure. I'll just say Rami Malek is doing fine. I think his part of the movie is kind of the weakest in some regards in terms of his character. Not only that,
he's literally
his character should probably be like double the age that he is, and it's just inexplicably like not explained or touched on, which we'll get into in spoilers. I thought it was going to become an element of the plot, and then I was just dumbfounded when they didn't even try to explain it.
He's also not in it a lot.
You're right. He's not. He just kind of he is in the beginning, and then he comes back for the back half, right? It's like you said, it's very patchwork in terms of what
motivations they're understandable to an extent, but then stop at a certain point and you go, I'm still not connecting the dots on why things are happening, and is a very big part of why the silliness is there. Good call out. Anything you want to say before we go into spoilers, Chris?
No, let's do it. Let's move in.
Yeah, I echo everything Brian said. Definitely, you're getting to where the real fun of the movie is, which unfortunately is the beginning. No shout outs for Léa Seydoux, who returns.
I think she's doing fine. I think she has a lot more to do in Spectre, and therefore I probably prefer her performance there. It's getting into some of the writing stuff that doesn't necessarily work as well with her character that we can get into in spoilers, where she's kind of relegated to a particular type of role that they very much went against in Spectre. So I think it's a little bit to the disservice of her character, maybe.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah, it's funny. She's never been. She wasn't a shout out on the last movie we talked about, and I always have to bring her up because I'm always.
I don't think it's her fault. I think it's a writing
thing. I think it's a writing thing for sure. I agree. All right, Chris is going to die because he can't say anything unless he spoils the movie from this point out. To be fair, Chris, as much as I'm making fun of you, I accidentally spoiled part of the movie.
Moneypenny.
To be fair, I think to be fair, I was the most vague in my opinions intentionally. You guys were the ones that kind of went deeper than we were supposed to. So.
I didn't. What did we spoil? Well,
Judgment.
Let's go into spoilers.
I didn't spoil shit. I didn't spoil shit. I know we have a lot of things to say. Something very important happens that's never happened to Bond film. Clearly, that's like big elephant in the room. Chris, I could see you. Your eyes are melting. However, can I just say...
Just lack of sleep.
Okay, wait wow. So we'll make sure this is quick for you. No, before we get into the big spoilers, can I just say the most rewarding thing about this entire movie was Q. He's handed a USB stick, and almost in complete response to my Skyfall problems, he goes, where has this been? Let's sandbox
Because
it.
he learned his lesson.
Which is a term for,
It's built within the character and the narrative of all these Bond movies, Christian.
I will say it's the most justified and the best arc of the entire series is Q learning something
I think
he
it's a
should have
direct
learned.
Learning cybersecurity,
Learning cybersecurity, be like, yep, I should have done that. That seems really stupid on my part. And sandboxing the random-ass USB stick that Daniel Craig, the defective, not currently active MI agent, hands him. Clever move. So
that is a great line, though, when he's like, where's this been? And Bond's like, everywhere.
It's true. It's been, you know who we didn't call out? Is who's playing the Russian scientist? It is David Dinkik. Am I saying that right? Absolutely a star. Denchik? Yeah, something like that. Absolutely. As far as the goofy parts of this Bond are working.
So wacky.
Oh my God. I'm like, please, this is the tone. If we're going to go for it, go for it. And he's just being a goofy little, he reminded me of Boris from GoldenEye. Like, for sure, had hardcore Boris vibes. And let's take it.
Boris energy.
I'll take goofy, nerdy Russian any day. Chris, what do you want to talk about? What's most on your mind?
I just to elaborate a little bit on the elements that I was talking about during my non-spoiler opinions, I think I'm really torn about this movie overall. And I think that matches up with how I describe the film, because I really did enjoy the movie and I like it as a Daniel Craig Bond film. I think it fits well with the others, but I do think it's a little unnecessary, and it is very different in tone in terms of narrative than the other films. You know, placing Bond in this kind of family man position and having him spend, 2/3 of the film trying to protect his daughter really shifts, who this character is. And with that, we do still get globe-trotting and there's some spy elements, but it really has a different vibe to it that I do appreciate. And I like seeing Bond as a father figure. I think it adds to his character. It's just something we've never seen in a Bond movie before. And because of that, it really does make the finale of the movie more impactful when he sacrifices his life and he's forced by our villain to separate himself from his, the mother of his daughter. I like I said, I was openly weeping. My wife and I were both openly weeping. And maybe it's because I feel connected to Daniel Craig specifically as Bond. Maybe it's because we've just rewatched all of these movies, but for whatever reason, that scene deeply impacted me. I almost had like the death of Tony Stark tears coming out of my eyes, which is
spoilers for
surprising.
a totally different movie that 6 billion people have seen, so I think that's okay. I'll let it slide.
I didn't expect that, you know? And truth be told, I knew that it was coming. But it still hit me, you know? And yeah, it's just, this movie has a weird energy about it that doesn't seem to line up with the rest of the Daniel Craig Bond films.
But that's the thing, Chris, is that it's trying to do like, because Casino Royale is exploring what broke this man to make him such a womanizer, what made him immune to falling in love, actually. Excuse me. What it made him immune to falling in love, actually. Love Actually, different movie. And, you know, how does that fit into him being secret agent and espionage and all that? And it threads that needle from all of our accounts really well in a way that works tonally. And this is a series of Daniel Craig falling on a lot of magical couches and a lot of ridiculous over-the-top characters and villains with seemingly no motivation, which we'll talk about, and silly, like, logical things where there's a really awesome moment where Daniel Craig twists his watch and explodes the dude's eyes, which is probably in Brian's favorite moments, because why wouldn't it be? But yet, the magical EMP thing that doesn't affect his earpiece, which he immediately talks into right after, even though he had a very strong
selective EMP.
Yeah, very selective.
What's the line that he says afterwards about how it went?
It blew his mind.
Blew his mind.
Exactly.
Incredible.
And that, which is, would you actually say that after taking a man's life?
It's psychopathic. It's
no,
incredible.
It's insane. Absolutely insane. And in that same movie, it is also trying to be like, but Bond is also like a dad who like can't see his loved ones and is ending his life. And it's like, yes,
he gets the Han Solo, I know, moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's what you're feeling is the tonality. And that's why I think this is actually more perfect than Spectre, because I think Spectre is absurdly over the top and really doesn't try as much to, you know, they make Leo Seydoux' character a very similar, like you had pointed out in our last episode, a very similar romance that he sees again, similar to Vesper in the first.
Right.
But it doesn't go much deeper beyond that, and there's not too much emotion other than a very quick, like, we're actually brothers from Blofeld, which just falls flat on its face and is so ridiculous that it is a ridiculous thing. It's a stupid line. It's a throwaway thing. It's whatever. This film actually tries to reintroduce some of the other Craig Bond stuff, and although it's not working for obvious reasons, I do think it does emblemize this series better, as clunky as it is, if that makes any sense.
Well, and that kind of ties into what I was saying in my non-spoiler thoughts, which is I'm still kind of ruminating on like how I actually feel about this film. There's so much to unpack in this film for me, and those shifting tones, because I do think it will probably age well in terms of being a capstone for the overall Craig films and the character arc that Daniel Craig goes on as James Bond. But in terms of like a 007 finale, we talked last week in regards to how Spectre really felt kind of like that Brosnan era Bond. Like we'd finally gone from rebooting Bond to getting him all the way back to this like weird, fantastical, like a bunch of fun gadgets, like, oh, look at all these quips Bond back in Spectre. And having him kind of ride into the sunset in the DB5 with his new love interest leaving MI6, I think is a great open-ended 007 finale. But in terms of James Bond as a character, I think No Time to Die might actually be a better finale for James Bond. So it's weird. It really depends on like what do you want out of James Bond as a film franchise.
But that's my argument, is that this is trying to do both, and therefore is a fitting end, but also clunky. Because if you look at it, like, I think the highlights of this series are definitely Casino Royale, obviously, because it is 007 is just become 00. And he's like, it's that beginning of why is this man a psychopath? Why is he having love problems? Like, who hurt you, James? And we find out who hurt James. It's a classic. It's basically an emo record on film. I think the other interesting thing is Skyfall, which is a fall from grace. James Bond has lost a step. he's really not like he has to re-earn his 00 status, and clearly he's just not the same old James. So again, not really a 007 film. And then in this one, again, not a 00. So I think Craig Bond has always been in this like, you're not quite the secret agent anymore, or like, you know what I mean? So it's very, to me, it's very fitting of who he is. So it kind of makes
understandable.
sense. Brian,
To you guys talking about it aging, I think what's interesting about this in terms of things that do connect it, and for better or for worse, but it seems to kind of redo plot points that have happened in previous movies. So obviously Vesper and Madeleine, Dr. Swann's character, very much a similar thing there. The debatable betrayal that turns out to not be a betrayal.
Bond has a hard time with growth. He tends to repeat the same mistakes over and over and over again.
But I'm interested in how you guys view this, because do you think he believes her that she didn't betray him when he leaves her in the beginning?
I think he's confused. Yes. I was where Bond was, and very much for the beginning of this film, I'm in it for sure, 100% of the way. And I think that he's heartbroken, and that classic thing of how do you trust, which is classic Spice shit. So for it, because it is that I don't know if I can trust you. I want to, but I don't know if I can, and all my instincts are telling me no at this exact moment. And I'm a man who trusts my instincts, and they're confusing my heart right now, which is like that problem that where he finally let his guard down, it broke him. So that's still a shadow from his past. So I
definitely think at the beginning of the movie, based on all the evidence that he's been presented with, her taking him. Where are they? Are they in Rome? What's the
They're
location?
in the same place that Vesper died, right? They're in Venice.
Well, it's where
Venice.
she's buried.
It's where she's buried. I think it's a different place.
I think it is different than Venice.
Okay.
Regardless, they're someplace in Europe.
And it's a similar vibe, right? They have the hotel.
She has taken him there.
It's the same exact story of the end of him and Vesper, which is they're running away together. They're in this place. He's just stepping out. And I think in the previous one, it was her just stepping out. There's a phone call that erupts. It's very parallel with that first betrayal.
Right. So as I was saying, like, she's the one that's led him there. She's the one that says, go visit Vesper's grave to like get your closure, and then we can move on together. So she's kind of prompting him to go do these things. And then with the grave blowing up and Bond being away from MI6, just having dealt with Spectre, like presented with all that evidence, being that she was responsible for them being there in the first place, of course he wouldn't trust her based on his past experiences. So he's so close to the spy life in that moment that he hasn't had enough time to breathe and kind of like evaluate the relationship, So he immediately defaults to who he originally was. So yeah, I think he's genuine in that moment where he tosses her on the train and like parts ways with her. Like he just does not trust her.
And to be honest, like this is where
until
this movie...
Blofeld reveals that he was the author of all his pain again.
It didn't make sense to me. It's like he already knew from the last movie that this is the daughter of a main Spectre guy, right? So it's like, I don't know. It seems obvious that he would eventually go back to this. That didn't really necessarily work for me. It seemed like Bond forgot who she was, and then Blofeld reminded him. And it's like, I don't know. But in terms of connections to other movies, we had that. We had the intro scene, which I can't remember. I think it might be in Skyfall, but there's another falling through the ice scene in one of the movies.
Skyfall.
That felt like it is Skyfall. That felt like a callback to. From Spectre, we get introduced the idea of Q having smart blood. So there's nanotech that's introduced that kind of is the precursor to us finding out that M is the one who developed this new stuff, which I thought was really cool looking back, and kind of they don't do a great job of it. But
they could have just talked about it
of MI6 throughout the course of the thing, and showing how even within the organization, no one's perfect and people do some pretty heinous things. Sorry, what did you say, Christian?
I'm gonna say, like, I think the ideas are all there and it's really cool. They just talk about it way too much. Like they over explain it, and it's like, I would have rather been slightly confused and had to watch it again than been like, I get it. There's nanobots.
And the fact that we get one of the coolest set designs in the entire series of the nanobot farm, but it's just inexplicable what's actually happening there. It's cool looking.
And they don't seem to...
The water
workers,
melts people.
And the workers did not seem to know they were working on poison, because as soon as someone dies, they're like, that's what that shit does?
No wonder they forced me to wear this protective suit.
Right.
I thought we were at a rave. I'm high as shit. Yeah, it's very inexplicable.
Just inhaling the fumes. So yeah, I do think this movie worked better coming off of having seen all the other ones. I think there are references, but it does feel like a bit of a grab bag trying to wrap it all up here. The one other scene, which I know we'll get into favorite moments. This maybe can lead into it, but Inspector, when Bond first infiltrates them and Blofeld calls him out and knows that he's there. We get a very similar situation here that leads into the best fight scene in the movie, in my opinion. That is a direct callback to the last movie that I really appreciated, and it was a really cool moment.
Agreed.
Yeah. And let's go into favorite moments here, shall we? Brian, you're going last because you always spoil the best ones here.
I know.
So, Chris, why don't you start us off and give us a couple of your favorite moments?
In line with some of my favorite moments from the last few episodes that we've had, I really like this opening sequence. Before I even get into like the opening chase sequence, I like that we actually get to see this story that Madeleine talked about in Spectre. You know, she talks about a man coming to their house and killing her mother and her father not being there and her having to shoot this man.
So, Chris, she doesn't say that her mother gets killed in Spectre.
Just that someone invaded the house.
And she talks about having the gun, but it was interesting. So that may have been something that was added. It's unclear.
Either way, it's fun getting to see this story unfold. I don't think it's necessary, but I think in terms of like lore and world building for this particular Bond, it's fun. You know, it's a fun callback to seemingly a throwaway line in the last movie.
Yeah.
But what I really love is this opening sequence after Vesper Lynd's grave explodes and Bond racing back to the hotel room on the motorcycle and grabbing that line and like swinging on the bridge. And even the scene where he like ducks as the car's coming towards him and the car flips, like this whole action sequence, literally from the grave exploding to Madeleine Swann being pushed onto the train by Bond, is just fucking spectacular.
Oh, he hides behind that tiny. You brought up
that's
the car.
That's what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Okay, yes, amazing.
So awesome. I honestly think some of the best stunts out of the whole era, to be perfectly honest. But I love the sequence in which they're in the DB5 and they're being chased and they're in this square. And Bond is so upset with Madeleine that like he believes that he's been betrayed again. And he's just biding his time, knowing that like the DB5 is mostly bulletproof, just to like scare the shit out of her, kind of. It's like a really aggressive and kind of mean Bond that we haven't seen. And she's like pleading with him to do something.
The way that the bulletproof glass is reacting, I feel like it's some of the most realistic. I've never seen bulletproof glass, but it was terrifying. And this is why I kind of read it as he actually believed that she didn't betray him at this point, because the guy with the shotgun is actively shooting directly at her. Yeah. So I thought that was kind of an indicator to him that they wouldn't be shooting at her as much, but it's interesting that you read it that way. I think it's debatable.
I don't know.
Sure.
I think he's just so upset.
He definitely is.
No, he definitely is upset. I think you're both right. I think he's like, waiting out to be like, are they really going to try to shoot her? And there's a point where he goes, that glass is going to break on any of the shots. At this point, they might be trying to kill her. Like, okay, well, I'll at least believe it enough that I'll get us out of here. And it goes into like classic
and the use of the
Bond stuff,
gadgetry in that moment with like the Gatling guns coming out of the headlights and the use of like the smoke coming out of the back of the car. It's just classic Bond. It's such a cool action sequence. And thoroughly enjoyed this opening sequence. It could potentially be one of my favorite, if not my favorite, opening sequence. I'll need to rewatch it once the movie comes to VOD. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. Very cool.
One thing I want to say, a couple things I want to say. First thing is the trailer ruined this, and this is why I don't watch trailers. Is because I watched this trailer because we had seen a couple movies before this one in theaters, and I'm like, the whole time I was like, oh, he's doing the spinning gun thing, and that would have been such a fun little surprise because we haven't seen that from this car and all that stuff. So it's kind of the surprise. But all that being said, it is spectacular, and I think it's the best that like. If you think about the spy and espionage thing, it's constantly a thing of who can you trust and can our hero trust this character and is there something else at play? And all that's happening in this little short film, which is the opening. And I think it's beautiful. And it really is like, as we'll talk about as we go on in the movie, it's like when you keep it like this simple, it can still be fun. Like he has these little mines that come out the back and that's silly, but it's still like it's like Batman grounded. And I think that's really the bar. And we've compared a lot to Nolan Batmans, but I think when it's in the Batman grounded, which is just a slightly above, slightly below fantastical, slightly above realistic, I think that's when it's working the best. So good call, Chris.
And my other favorite moment, I'm going to say for Brian.
Oh, that's
we're gonna
so
talk about
nice.
Oh, that's the one I already brought up?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. So before I get to that one, Christian, do you want to go?
No, I think me and you probably have the favorite moment. We're already there. Go ahead. Just talk about it.
Okay, so I'll just get into the one that we've. So the fight scene in Cuba with Ana de Armas, it's just incredible. So their interactions to begin with, they're playing against the type. Bond thinks she's coming on to him when she's just doing her job.
Just trying to dress him.
Yeah, she's just trying to make him look the part at this swaggy party. And she jokingly, well, I guess he realizes that she hasn't been doing the job for 3 weeks, but she's kind of lying to him about her experience, playing up her naivete and new to the game.
Yeah, she's so playful. It's great.
And then she just kicks the most ass of anyone in the movie following this. And it's just incredible. And then she disappears for the rest of the movie. And it's like, where did she go? I would definitely see a movie following her character and Lashana Lynch as well. Just saying. If
apparently
they
this came from Craig meeting her on the scene of Knives Out.
Knives Out.
She played the main character in Knives Out, and she's electric. And you're just like, you gotta be thinking the director, the editors were sitting there going like, this should have been it. We could have.
She should have been the Bond girl for this movie.
And that's like the thing that it struggles against is that, it wanted to tell this cohesive story, so you bring back this other person, but clearly you just have so much more chemistry. But to be fair, part of the chemistry is that she's not really interested in him. She's very nervous and excited about her job. Right. And it does play against type in so many ways, because not only is it against type that she's not into him in any way, but also that she's new but then capable, which is a really cool twist, which is like she's not like helpless. And it's just the most fun. And through that first scene, I mean, you're talking about the first scene through some expository stuff, and then to this, it's like, you're sitting there going like, oh, they're threading the needle perfectly. It's fun, but yet I still have I still have a connection to the character, and I'm interested in where the story's going. We get that scene in the club where you meet like the nervous CIA agent who looks like Zac Efron but isn't Zac Efron, like cheap Walmart, great value Zac Efron.
It's Billy Magnuson. Is that how you say his last name?
I said it. I said great value Zac Efron. I had already said it, Chris. So like I think all that is like you bring up, and this is the apex. And if the movie would have just ended, I would have been like, that was short. I don't know what happened, but like I'm good. That was great. I'm walking out of here. I feel like I got my money's worth. Like at that point, my $20 super premium movie theater experience is well worth it, because that scene is so good. And really shows his alcoholism. He gets a drink again. Like he makes a drink after all. So good.
Yep.
So good.
So yeah, just speaking to, I feel like at this point, with the way it ended, they may just decide to scrap all of the characters from this and start fresh.
I'm sure.
If they weren't to do that, I would say Ana de Armas' character could be the new Felix to Lashana Lynch's 007. And you could definitely have an excellent movie there. Like it's in place, right? I think there's potential. So yeah, that scene was amazing. Leading up to that, one of my favorite moments, Felix, just party boy Felix.
Coked out Felix.
Living outside the lines. he gets the band back together. And it's just one of my favorite moments when Bond calls him back. It's off screen. He's like, I'm in. And Felix is like, he's in. Yeah, just like so excited. And I couldn't help but be excited. I was like, yeah, we're getting the boys back together. Fuck yeah.
It's just
we're going to Cuba.
You know,
I loved it.
It's so crazy that like we started this adventure at the beginning of the month. And I remember Jeffrey Wright being in Casino Royale. But I totally forgot I totally forgot that he was in Quantum of Solace. Like, I forgot that he was a reoccurring character in all of these films. Like, I don't know how it slipped my mind, but like it pays off so well in this movie. And I think Felix gets a decent send off. You know, it's an emotional send off for Felix as well.
Ana de Armas gives him the cigar to Bond after asking. He eventually gives it to him. Yeah, I think that was well done. That was a more emotional scene than actually Bond's for me, ultimately, strangely enough.
Wow.
But I still don't think either of them, like I said, the best moment for me was in the opening credits.
I think, if I could interrupt, just on the Felix note, if his name was Felix Leiter in the previous films, this is Felix heavier. Like, what's so weird, and I love him in this, and it just makes me go, I wish he was this character in the other ones. Like, I think this is a good choice. But, and like maybe some shit happened that will be revealed in like a graphic novel we receive later.
It seems like it because he seems so by the book in Casino Royale. He's like really well dressed, like definitely like a upstanding member of the CIA.
Some stuff that we are not privy to.
Something happened.
I think he was introduced to cocaine because like if you just view it through the eyes of Felix started doing cocaine like in the interim between Spectre and this movie, it makes total sense. Because he's just like, come on, Bond, we gotta do it, man. We gotta get the bad guys, bro. Like, and like Bond's like, who's this sketchy, weird, smiley CIA? I don't know. He's fucking giving
Felix
the
is in the middle of a midlife crisis with the friggin' spook, who's like double agent. Yeah, high out of his mind.
It's very interesting where we're placed with it. One of the fun elements, and ultimately, like you said, I think it is actually pretty emotionally impactful. Continue, Brian.
Yeah, the last one, which I kind of already brought up, I thought it was a pretty interesting choice to have M be integrally tied to kind of the big world-ending event here with this. I brought it up in the chat. It eventually becomes nearly Wonder Woman 1984 levels of like setting up rules and then immediately breaking them. It does enough to make us understand what ultimately happens, but making it come from M, I thought was a really bold choice and an interesting way to end the series, where we've been conflicted about the leadership at MI6 from the beginning, maybe, or the upper leadership. So yeah. I thought that was a cool take, and you know, him clearly coming to terms and being regretful of that with Ralph Fiennes. You know, as M, always really great in his roles. So I appreciated them going that route, even though had this movie, I brought it up in text earlier, had this movie come out in November 2019, it would have been very interesting to see how the world reacted to this kind of storyline with COVID happening literally right after that.
I feel like it's so preposterous that it would have diffused some of the like deep state conspiracies, because it would have been like, oh yeah, it's pretty stupid. Because it's so poorly said. Not that the idea couldn't be true, but you know, there's a lot of ideas about someone made this to do this, right? With coronavirus. Right. And this is like the bad telling of that story, where you're like, that seems unreasonable. Like it might have actually saved democracy.
It's also not explicitly a disease, you know? They're nanobots.
It's a bioweapon now. Yeah, I mean, they go through... that could have been ADR. If you think about it, they could have ADR'd that shit because of post-COVID. I'm not saying it's... I've only seen it once, but I swear to God, I'm going to watch it again and be like, does anybody mouth the word nanobots? Or is that all off-screen shit to be like, it's different. It's different. Well, it's different.
You think they would go in and change the physical assets for the vials? Because, I mean, we can clearly see... like nanobots moving within the vials.
Yes. Can they? Post-production shit? You mean green screen
I'm
shit?
not saying that they can't. I'm saying like,
yeah,
would 100%. They have done that? I mean, I guess they would have had enough time.
100%.
They did introduce, like I said, they had the smart blood. So they did introduce nanotech in Spectre, to their credit. But yeah, and the creators didn't out and out admit this, but Falcon and Winter Soldier kind of pushed up against some similar issues, maybe
Yeah, we talked about
downplaying a biochemical virus sort of terrorist plot. So yeah, just weird kind of cultural zeitgeisty stuff like this that had it come out when it was supposed to would have been even stranger, I think.
But to the logic of it, if you think about all the times when Daniel Craig is exposed to this nanobot thing 3 times, if not
so
maybe
let's
more.
count them out. So it's like the one
party?
is when he grabs
Lisa-Doux's Madeleine's arm.
Yeah.
The party.
And it's
So was she
specifically
there?
meant for Blofeld.
Was she there to kill Blofeld?
Yes.
Okay, and
That's
she
the
bailed.
perfume had the
Yes.
nanobots, and then when he grabs
But
her arm, he
because-
gets it on his hand.
Yeah, like Christian just said.
So at the party, he sprayed with them, and it was supposed to kill him. That was Blofeld's plan, but it kills all Spectre. At the prison with Blofeld, and then also at the ending when he actually gets
on the
one.
island. Yeah, but those first 2 times,
It wasn't
they were never
programmed.
programmed for him
But you gotta imagine,
or for Madeleine.
you got 3 nanobots straight. Like Bond
His
is
blood is just half
crawling.
nanobots at that point.
It also doesn't make any sense because, like, I don't know if it could like live in your system forever because there's like filtration systems in your body to like.
They claimed that it was there forever.
Q uses the term eternal,
Yeah, like
which
Bond is dead.
Insane.
It's still with him in the afterlife.
And this is
you'd
kind of the
think they
thing.
could do some type of like blood transfusion to evacuate them.
No, you
but
would-
I don't know if we never get there. It's never explained if they like multiply on any type of level. Or
I mean, if they're the
I don't know.
size of white blood cells and they're a foreign invader, like, I mean, theoretically, you could like vaccinate and like your body could destroy it or break it down somehow. It's, I mean, I mean, it's nanobots. Who gives a shit? What is it made out of? Like, that's so many other scientific questions that ultimately it's ludicrous. It's fantasy.
All they would have to do is quarantine Bond and then give him some type of blood transfusion, and then he should be good to go. He could rejoin his family.
Could I I just had this thought in my head, just so I can get it off my chest, because I will forget that I had this thought, and it'll never be said. We've all said my favorite moments is this front half of the film. Everything else is very stupid, and like this is like the stupidest parts of Bond. Like there's good ideas, but ultimately none of it's working. But I will say there's one meaningful thing, which was not the death for me, which is in my favorite moment, and then we can move into our final thoughts. The one part that was working for me was actually just like a retrospective on the last year and a half of our lives. And I don't know, this is obviously not intentional. This is a byproduct of just this, but you know, there's this idea that Bond gets the nanovirus, which is stupid, that will kill his daughter and love. And there's the conversation they're having and him being like, I can't see you again. And like, I have to not touch you. I was immediately thinking of how we've been interacting and like how we've been talking to our loved ones, which is like, you know, I'm not allowed to actually touch you because I love you so much that I don't want to see you because it could hurt you. And I thought of this weird juxtaposition of how we've been living our lives. And that actually really touched me, of this idea that you would not, you know, you'd have to communicate through like a walkie-talkie or a phone because your fear of hurting somebody else. No, all this is squandered because you're like, well, you're on a missile silo and you had to open the thing. And Bond got shot 6 times, which is pretty violently. And I was like, I don't think you're making it out
We
there.
don't see any blood.
No, we do. He's dripping blood all the way walking up the stairs.
I thought that was just his face.
No, he gets shot in the like side. Rami Malek clips him and then shoots him again into his abdomen. I don't think he's making it out there. He's got to take a boat or something. Not happening. That being said, emotionally impacting was you see Bond's eyes as he's like dying and saying how he like, nope, I can't see you. And I was like, oh, that parallels kind of beautifully with how we've had to treat our loved ones in the past.
It is very poignant.
Unintentional, but very
I'm
nice.
so glad it resonated with you on that way, Christian, because it's so true. And I was just thinking of it on this basic level of like, Bond fucks. He can't fuck now. It's just, it goes against everything he stands for.
Oh, no,
he
poor
can't
Bond.
touch the woman he loves. But you're so right that it works even better on that level.
Yeah, and I thought that was kind of the sweetest moment. Bond dying, I kind of saw it from a mile away towards the back end of the movie of like, okay, I see where they're going with this. But yeah, that kind of closes out, my final thoughts. Is there anything else you want to say as far as...
I do want
favorite
to
moments?
bring up somewhat of a fan theory and get your opinions on it.
Okay.
Based on the end of this movie, with Madeleine driving away in the car with Mathilde and saying like, I want to tell you a story about a man named James Bond. Fans have come up with this theory that the entire Craig era is actually Madeleine telling the story of James Bond. That's why there's so many peaks and valleys in terms of like tonal differences.
The lengths in which anybody will go to explain away bullshit is
right, where she's just kind of relaying her memory of who this man was, and that's also why he kind of looks different from the other James Bonds. And anyway, what do you guys think of that fan theory? I think it's very silly, but what do you think about it?
Yep.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything there that really would heavily suggest it throughout, but I conceptually think it's a fun idea. This whole thing of like the absent father and explaining to the kid like, oh, he's a secret agent, that's why he was never around. It's kind of an interesting idea about like explaining a father who abandoned them. So yeah,
he's not here not because he's a deadbeat. It's because he's a secret agent.
He is a womanizing secret agent, globe traveling, licensed to kill.
Yeah.
She's like, what happened in when he went to Morocco in the desert with the environmentalist terrorist? And she's like, honestly, I don't remember
Monica
this one as well.
Bellucci on the yacht. That wasn't cool, was it?
I don't remember this one super well. Unfortunately, all the storytellers went on strike. So I was unable to really get the end all be all story. So that makes it a little harder for me to tell this one, darling. Okay. So maybe I was sober when I saw this movie. I swear to God. I thought you said James burned. No.
So you're telling me that at the end of Daniel Craig's James Bond run, a character is going to refer to him as James Burned?
I know this sounds stupid.
Like the Gersberms?
I know this sounds...
Not burned.
Brian, can you confirm you saw this because you saw it with your dad? You saw it with closed captioning because your dad is hard of hearing, right? So you saw the words on the screen. She said James Bond.
Yes.
Damn
yes,
it.
she said James Bond.
So yeah, I thought she said...
Thanks for clarifying, Brian.
Okay, her stupid French accent.
Oh yeah, it probably was the accent.
Sounded like burned. And actually, I was like, that sounds stupid. But then I was like, oh, at the beginning they're burning memories. And I was like, oh, that's cool. But now it's ruined.
I did like that.
I did. Which is almost as stupid as she's telling her daughter the bedtime story, which is this entire series, which explains all the inconsistencies and tonal abnormalities. But it's sure a fun thought. It's sure a fun thought. All right, boys, anything else? We didn't talk about Ryan Malek. It's sad that he's not better written. It sucks.
He's not a great Bond villain. And, as we were talking, I was kind of thinking about it. Like, he really doesn't have any qualm with Bond.
No, he likes him.
Outside of the fact that he's with the woman that he loves. Like they're competing for the same woman. His real obsession is with Madeleine Swann. He could give two fucks about Bond.
He likes him.
No,
he's like, we're the
true.
Same. You and I, Bond, we're the same.
Always.
Yeah, they're always the same. Bond's the same as everybody.
Yeah, it's really sad because he does have good motivation, but then, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't remember the film explaining why he wants to kill everybody on Earth. Like it makes sense why he wants to kill Spectre. I'm not sure the film does anything to let us know why he thinks he needs to kill everybody, because the film isn't like, it seems really simple. They were explaining enough shit that it feels like they could have just added an explanation that made sense, which is that he wanted to kill like all the people he thought was bad. But it seems indiscriminate. When they look at the map, it's like everywhere. And it's like millions of people, hundreds of millions going up. And it doesn't seem to make an effort that he wants to kill bad people. And again, I don't know if that's a rewrite or something, or a re-edit that they were
Brian, you've seen it multiple times. Do you have an answer for that question? I can't answer that question.
No, this is the part of the plot that just makes no sense at all. Yeah, because what he really says is like his ultimate gripe is being screwed over by an intelligence agency assassin, right? His whole family was killed. So he takes that out of them. So it makes sense why he would go against intelligence agencies. The reason he wants to kill this little girl who he saved previously, he says the line about you're connected to someone forever after you save them, and therefore you want to kill them. Doesn't really make a lot of sense. And then ultimately it's this whole thing about like parental issues, I guess, that he's just trying to work with as a foil for Bond. But yeah, it's throwing a lot in there. Doesn't nail any of it.
Here's the real conspiracy theory. We've talked about them overdubbing the nanobots thing, which may or may not be true. Here's a more outlandish one. Is what if it's specifically supposed to kill certain people and they just did not feel comfortable with a bioweapon killing specific people? Like he was basically like, oh, I'm going to kill all the people that I think are wrong. And it's actually more explained, but they were really hesitant in it being targeted.
Like more of like a Project
like a
Insight
thing.
Like a Project Insight from Winter Soldier type of thing.
Think of it, because that's how that's what it was designed to do in the first place. So for him to like
be more precise than a human assassin, basically.
Right. And what if he was like, oh, I'm going to take out all the major governments or people that I disagree, like all these people who have power, to give it back to the people or whatever. And they just had to cut it because they were like, this is just too dark and prescient. Like, I'm not saying, I have no proof that this is the case, but it does seem odd because like there's bad writing in a lot of these movies. They've at least justified every character. And it seems that Rami Malek's character has zero motivation past the revenge for his,
something's missing.
Something,
for sure. The huge gap that he's not in the movie kind of shows that there may be some patchwork stuff happening there. And, you know, we talked about how there's 4 or 5 writers on this. I think the 2 guys that had worked on most of the previous movies did one draft. Then you had a couple other people come in and do punch-ups, and more than punch-ups.
Oh, shit. You know, I don't want to get too down the conspiracy rabbit hole, but the last writer added was, am I wrong, Anthony Fauci? Shit. This rabbit hole goes deeper than I thought.
On the nose there, Bond. Jeez.
Doctor. Yeah, that was the previous title, was Dr. Ouchie Fauci. Oh, my God. Well, on that note, I think we already answered that question that I had. This is fitting into Craig's run. I think we answered it like in the spirit of it. Obviously, he dies in it. If I was to say, like, Brian, I loved your idea, I don't think they're going to continue on with the same actors, because I just feel like this is just going to be such a polarizing film as far as the ending and how people feel.
Think, you know, I think I read in an interview that even Barbara Broccoli has said that James Bond will never be female.
Yeah, well, Barbara Broccoli,
the person that holds the rights, is like, that'll never happen.
Yeah, she's going to die at some point, and, you know, I think that... I mean, whether or not James Bond is a female, I don't think it really matters. You know, we've seen with like other films that they can just
007. I mean, we've seen in this movie, 007's just a title.
I think that's something cool they explored. I feel like again,
what number is he?
Was that the moment you're going to mention where they like give 007 back to Bond? That was dumb. Super
terrible.
Stupid.
Yeah, so bad. Just cringy.
You don't like that?
No, I thought it was really bad. I liked the stuff prior where she's like kind of petty and, you know, like trying to fill his shoes, seeing what number he got when he was reinstated.
I don't read it as terrible. He gets to die as 007.
But that's the only reason they did it.
She didn't know he was going to die.
This is my point. So why would she?
She did.
Go ahead, Christian.
She knew it. I was really hoping they found out he was 008, or what's his face? Sean Beam's. He was 009, right?
009.
Right.
Yeah.
I was hoping they gave him 009, and then he got to boot her off a satellite and go like, and she goes, "For England, James?" And he goes, "No, for me."
They do make a 009 reference in Spectre.
They do, in fact.
With all the goofy settings in the car.
It's the one with the car, right? Yeah.
Overall, what I'll close with is just a really quick question, because we've been going long. We've actually filmed recorded 3 episodes tonight, so I appreciate Brian and Chris. Thanks for hanging along. I know we were trying to get the Spectre,
anytime,
No Time to Die review off. But I will just end with going, like, what do we think about the Bond era as a whole? We've watched all of the Bond, Craig films. We've rewatched them. What are our final thoughts on the entire series?
I really do love this series. And this will be a series that I come back to multiple times over the course of my life. Regardless of the ups and downs in the quality, Daniel Craig is just an extremely charismatic Bond. And with such a strong start in Casino Royale, I can't help but love watching him do anything, you know? So I really do enjoy all these movies for various reasons. Some are of much higher quality than others, but he's a fantastic James Bond. I'm going to miss him.
Brian.
Yeah, I had a great time rewatching all of these as well. I'll definitely come back to them too. I think it kind of showed, and to various effects, obviously, that you can revamp this character for a new age. And I think continuing to do that, I'm interested to see how, especially comparing where the world was when Casino Royale came out to where we are now, obviously didn't help them in terms of how fast social things have started changing in terms of the Me Too movement, for example, being one easy example that happened during the course of these movies coming out. So yeah, I think with that being said, with the problematic nature of this character historically, I'm pretty impressed with how well they towed the line with making something that is socially acceptable while still paying homage to the historical Bonds. So I'm really excited to see where they go going forward.
I echo everything that both of you said. I think overall, like the main takeaway for me, to keep a positive spin on it, is that these films are overall worth watching more than they aren't. Like I complained specifically, even in Skyfall, which is a great film for all accords. Like I focused a longer time than I probably would have in retrospective on one scene in particular that I had a problem with. But like at the end of the day, even for this movie or Spectre or even Quantum, having revisited it, like there's more to like than there is to dislike. And just like you said, Brian, I think that even starting out where they did, how much society has changed and stuff, I still think they've kept a good pace with what's going on. It is hard to thread the line of honoring what Bond is and what it's been to so many people. As we've said before, it's the perfect dad movie. And so obviously it's crossing generational bounds. And I still think it fits as a great dad movie. And it's something that is, I think we'll look back and be like, yes, Craig Bond, that was my Bond. Like, that was it. Like, no matter what comes after this, there'll be something special that we come back to just from being the generation that saw this as adults. And, you know, I'm hoping that if one day I have a child, it's something I enjoy with my kid in whatever capacity. So more good than there is bad. And you know what? For that, good job. Good job, team. Good job, Broccoli's. Broccolinis.
You did it, team.
You did it. Yeah, I think it's overall better than it is bad. And it's always fun and worth talking about, especially with you boys. Boys, where can people find more of your work on the internet?
Viewers and listeners, you can find me on Twitter at Chris Conkling, talking about all things nerdy, comic books, television, movies, video games, collectibles. If it's nerdy, I'm talking about it.
If it's nerdy, I'm talking about it. If there's a character creator, fuck you.
I'm not talking about it.
Follow us on Twitter
No
to
chance.
understand that reference. Brian?
You can find me on Twitter at TruePopaholic.
And you can find me and my band at Midnight Satire. Midnight Satire, Positive NDA, now streaming now. If you like Bond music, there's some notes that are the same in my music. We hit some same notes.
Oh, yeah. We didn't. Okay. Very tail end here. Hans Zimmer. Thomas Newman stepped out of the series. Christian, was it noticeable to you?
Maybe I'm wrong. And maybe it's influence. From what I've researched very briefly, I believe Hans Zimmer was referencing other famous scores in Bond's history.
Oh.
But the first three notes of everything sounded like something else, but not Bond stuff, because I'm not that well versed in it. There is a track that starts, I think, halfway, maybe midway through, that sounded like Leia's theme for like the first three notes. And like that happened frequently where I thought I was hearing a different soundtrack and I just couldn't pin it. So it's definitely, and coming to research, it is like music from other Bond movies and other famous Bond motifs and stuff. So it's very much not a Hans Zimmer score. It's very much Zimmer. It's a Bond Zimmer.
Heyo.
It is like, it is like an homage, as we find with a lot of the stuff happening in this Bond. It is homage to music.
It's a double homage.
Oh, Brian, cut this man off. Cut this man off. If it's Daddy, he's joking about
That's
it.
rough. That's rough.
Chris, do you have anything to say on the score?
I didn't even realize it was Hans Zimmer until I looked at the show notes. So I concur
That
with
shows you.
what Christian's saying.
Yeah.
But when we listened to the trailer, I was like, oh, that music does sound like Hans Zimmer. But watching the movie, I was like, I don't know. I couldn't even tell.
The trailer sounds like a lot of...
Which sounds like Hans Zimmer. To be frank.
That's a little bit didactic. Yes, me. Oh, we do get that cool... You get a legit Bond looking down a circular hallway shooting his gun in real time.
That was fun.
That was my
Good
favorite.
shout.
reference.
I'm glad we got there. Yeah, that was awesome.
That was and it fit very well. Although it takes place in this back half, which is just a video game. It's almost like GoldenEye the game for like 5 minutes of him running through corridors shooting people. Oh, there is a oneer. We didn't talk about the fucking oneer because so much of the back half is fraught. There's a big climactic fight scene of him going up a bunch of stairs, and it's a single shot, and it's pretty good. We didn't mention it, and I wanted to make sure we did so.
Perfect.
Right before the out of time switch thing. He really lost his head on that one. Why is that, Bond? Because his fucking head blew off. That's why. The fuck do you think I said it? Anyway, that's it for this episode. Find out more. Follow us on all the social medias. Link in the show description, or if you're watching on YouTube, in the arrow. It's called the disclosure triangle. Press the disclosure triangle. More stuff is disclosed. In it, you'll find a link tree, links to all our social medias.
In the description.
Which is the UI.
Below the disclosure triangle.
Below the disclosure
No,
triangle.
you click the disclosure triangle. I'm pretty sure there's the disclosure triangle. If there's not, I will correct myself later. If you're listening to the podcast feed, you can watch us. Watch this whole thing on YouTube. I got a really fun background with Daniel Craig. Hey, Daniel Craig, looking handsome there, aren't you? Oh, that's in his dapper little Commander Bond outfit. I like that one. See, you won't get that unless you're watching the YouTube. So smash that subscribe button on the YouTube. Appreciate that. Emails, popboxcast@gmail.com. We read every single email we get. Rate us 5 stars on your favorite podcatcher of choice, preferably Apple Podcast. We will read it aloud on the show. Follow us on the social medias. That's enough.